The threatened Great Salt Lake will be a top priority for me when I am mayor again. The desiccation of the Great Salt Lake would be devastating to Salt Lake City residents and businesses because metals, including antimony, copper, zirconium, and arsenic from the dry lake bed will blow into the city, resulting in heightened risks of severe respiratory illnesses, heart disease, lung disease, and cancers. The cascading effects would undermine and perhaps entirely destroy our neighborhoods, economic vitality, and overall quality of life. The dust could lead to degradation of soil and speed snowmelt, shortening winter sports seasons and reducing water supply later in the year. It would severely damage valuable wetlands, eliminate brine flies vital to the ecosystem, devastate the conditions upon which brine shrimp can exist, and threaten millions of migratory birds. As Candace Hassenjager, director of the Utah Division of Water Resources, stated, protecting and preserving the Great Salt Lake is a top priority for the state. The lake is vital to the environment, ecology, and economy, not just in Utah, but also to the western United States. I would change policy and practices dramatically from the little we've seen from our mayor these past 4 years, making it clear to the public this is an urgent matter of life and death for many of us, as well as our beloved city. Although individual conservation efforts are important for dealing with droughts, the Great Salt Lake will survive only if far less water is diverted for agricultural purposes. Under my leadership, Salt Lake City will create a coalition with other communities to pursue legal remedies, legislation, and public policy changes to protect the public interest in water conservation. Additionally, as I have done at my own home, turf should be eliminated or minimized throughout this area. We should do everything possible to create a public and personal ethic of water conservation, including advertising campaigns and public challenges, raising awareness of the disastrous impacts of continued poor stewardship of the Great Salt Lake. I would also restore Salt Lake City's position as an international climate protection leader, as when I was mayor, and I received the EPA's Climate Protection Award, and our city received the World Leadership Award in London for our environmental programs. We have been on notice for many years that continued reliance on burning fossil fuels will lead to a significant decrease in the water volume of the Great Salt Lake and dangerously high salinity, threatening brine shrimp and flies. Effective, urgent action is critical. We each have a responsibility to live sustainably and protect the environment, as I have by taking transit, driving low or no emissions cars for 22 years, having zero turf at my home, and relying solely on solar power with surplus electricity added to the grid. The city has a responsibility to support conservation by educating and setting an example. Sprinklers running full blast on Washington Square during rainstorms will not happen when I'm mayor. Our government officials need to walk the talk. To achieve necessary changes for saving the Great Salt Lake, we must recognize that even if every household permanently stopped watering lawns, that would not be a major factor in saving the Great Salt Lake. While alfalfa farming represents only 0.2% of the Utah economy, it uses 68% of available water. The most critical action that residents can take is to effectively push our elected officials and other policymakers at every level of government to take necessary measures immediately to sufficiently reduce the diversion of water for agricultural purposes. Among other things, we should all vigorously oppose the proposed Parley's Canyon mine, which will use significant amounts of water to suppress dust. So what should the state and federal government do to help save the lake? The greatest threat to the Great Salt Lake is, as I said, the diversion of water for agricultural uses, particularly alfalfa farming, which, as I noted before, uses 68% of available water. About 1/3 of alfalfa grown in Utah is exported to China at tremendous environmental and humanitarian costs to our state. The state and federal government can save the lake by prohibiting unnecessary agricultural crops like alfalfa and helping farmers transition to low or no water use of their land. Utah and the federal government should set two concrete mandatory goals. First, curb water consumption in the state by 1/3 to 1/2, allowing 2.5 million acre-feet of water to travel into the Great Salt Lake from streams and rivers for at least 2 years. And second, bring the elevation of the Great Salt Lake service to about 4,200 feet above sea level. The Utah legislature should also update water laws and eliminate the use it or lose it policies that contribute to water waste. The Utah legislature should also preempt local laws that require residents and businesses to have turf. The Utah legislature needs to finally recognize the findings of the 2007 Scientific Consensus Report, written by top Utah scientists, and end the support and encouragement for fossil fuel use and extraction throughout the state. It bears repeating, the depletion of the Great Salt Lake would severely undermine the quality of life in Salt Lake City. Residents will leave to avoid the high risk of poisoning, adverse health effects, and continued declines in property values. The poor air quality in the Salt Lake City area now decreases lifespans on average about 2 years. The depletion of the Great Salt Lake will ensure even shorter lives. Salt Lake City will not be able to attract and will lose businesses. Regional recreation and economic drivers like winter sports will wither because of early snow melts. Our city will be irrevocably altered, much like what is anticipated with the ongoing desiccation of Lake Urmia in Iran. The dreaded complete desiccation of Lake Urmia poses a significant risk of mass migration from the region. The same dangers are posed by the desiccation of the Great Salt Lake. A similar conflict is at play regarding Lake Urmia as with the Great Salt Lake. As one Iranian environmental official said, Iran's Lake Urmia will dry out completely if rescue efforts are not prioritized over the needs of farmers in the drought gripping the region. We in Utah must likewise prioritize rescue efforts in relation to the Great Salt Lake over the perceived needs of farmers and make certain that we stop the diversion of water from the Great Salt Lake for agricultural purposes and help farmers transition to different low or no water uses of their lands.